Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Human Resolve podcast. I'm here with my special guest, Mike LeFever. Mike, please introduce yourself.
Hi, how are you? Savio, thanks for having me on. This is great. I'm Mike LeFever. I retired out of the Navy after 38 years as a Vice Admiral. I was fortunate enough to lead at all levels, graduated from the Naval Academy, and was a surface warfare officer with men's ship driver throughout my career, had command of a ship, a squadron, a strike group. And then my career took a little detour because I went in and led this large humanitarian assistance disaster relief in Pakistan in 2005 and 6. And I say, well, no kind deed goes unpunished. After 7 months, came out, but then was sent back to Pakistan to be the defense representative for the Department of Defense of the U.S. government there in Pakistan from 2008 all the way through 2011 in the bin Laden raid. And then retired out of the National Counterterrorism Center as the director for strategic operational planning. Since then, I have a passion for leadership and have done some payback work for all the wonderful experiences I had with the U.S. government. I do support. I was work with the Crystal Group, which was a leadership and consulting firm. Had my own leadership company, did some work as a cybersecurity, and now I'm CEO of Concentric, which is this great company out here on the West Coast that does security consulting and risk management.
Wonderful, Mike. So you and I were connected because you were so kind to contribute to my interview series with Authority Magazine, Rising Through Resilient, How to Be Resilient During Turbulent Times. And what I found really intriguing and profound is this idea of self-care. Like you name it as your number one priority. Can you give us more information and context around that?
Yeah, because I think how you show up as a leader is so very important. And so for me, the self-care was being rested, being prepared, being mentally ready to be able to support and lead the folks around you. Because as a leader, you're always on stage. You're never off. Never off out of anybody's view. So everything you do, how you respond, how you report yourself or lead others is so vitally important. So for me, self-care was really taking care of yourself, because many times we get so absorbed in the moment that we get so self-absorbed and we forget about taking care of yourself, and realizing that over time that takes a toll and it makes you more diminished in the ability of what you need to lead us, particularly through crises or what have you. For me, it's a kind of a daily workout to get moving, get my mind, I call it my mental health break, because it just, sometimes some of my good ideas come then that people are, hey, what do you think about this morning? But anyway, yeah, self-care is absolutely number one.
In the beginning, you alluded to a little bit of your background in national security, but give us more context. You were Vice Admiral and you graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. Any nuggets of information that those experiences taught you?
Boy, it teaches you to always not be complacent about where you are in an organization, but always the ability to learn new things and to be able to develop and evolve. The different experiences I've had from the Naval Academy and different assignments, the wonderful ability to travel the world, to learn about different cultures, to see other countries, to really appreciate what you had here in the United States, but also the opportunity and challenges that were presented, things that you never expected. I often talk about, expect the unexpected. Here I was, for that example, the earthquake. I'm leading a strike group of 5,500 Marines and sailors, a major deployment, just finished a multinational exercise, was then, going through the Straits of Hormuz to offload my Marines to work Fallujah for the famous election in 2005. And then all of a sudden I get called and says, hey, pack your bags. You're going to go to Pakistan to lead the earthquake relief effort for the United States. So here I was, an admiral 700 miles from saltwater working in the Himalayas. I had a good buddy, General John Allen, used to say, oh, we need a good admiral in the Himalayas.
Wow. Okay. What I also found really interesting was this idea of that those experiences crystallize your leadership philosophy and your naming and your roles in relationships and understanding of the environment. What has that garnered you over the years, those experiences?
I think it really helps solidifies what I found over time. and as in all situations, you have a great opportunity to learn from great leaders that, had led you, and also from the bad leaders of what you thought worked or didn't work and what works for you. And leadership is this interesting thing that everybody's different. And so there isn't a one size that fits all. But what I found for the success that I enjoyed was understanding this end game first. This, what is your strategic end state of what you're trying to achieve? And that helps you align, what you're doing, what you're pursuing to be able to do that. And it was a wonderful story. It was General Abizade that came ashore. I'm leading the earthquake. I'm ashore maybe for a couple of weeks, still assessing, bringing in lots. He goes, "Hey, Mike, you're not going to be here forever. This disaster is not going to last forever. What's your exit strategy?" And I looked at him and said, "Holy smokes, boss, I just got here. I'm still flown in forces." But he said, "Well, here's what I need you to do: provide humanitarian relief, and we want to improve U.S.-Pakistan relations." And so that solidified because, I also discovered in these crises that there's phases to a crisis. I call it 4 phases to a crisis. And as you get through the first kind of like the triage, the 911 moment, and then if you're thinking about phase 2, about if you don't have the refugee camp set properly, if you don't get clean water, if you don't take care of some of the environmental things, that could lead to a whole new crisis, a dysentery or what have you. But then as you get into more of a steady state, trying to get everything back to normalcy, that focus on the end state was really instrumental in making sure that all your actions and activities align to that goal. And so it really helped quite a bit in shaping that. And then the second big one is my command philosophy, I used to say, was my top 3 priorities are relationships, relationships, relationships. You can have them in any order, but those would be the top 3. But it is so important because, as you know, the success of so much stuff is developing relationships with individuals or others and treat it as a strategic partnership to be able to move out, because it is so vital. As we know today, this people are really hungry after being locked down in COVID to go back and engage and then to be a part of folks. And then the last one is really understanding your environment, taking a look around. What is it, who are the power brokers? What are the cultures, the significance of different things, how you show up, how you build your team, how one of my big things is checking your ego, personal, professional ego at the door, and about solving mission. But it is that understanding the environment so you know how to navigate that with great care as you understand all the different things that are going on that you're exposed to. I look at, again, Pakistan as an example, or any other environment, a new job. It's just understanding, what is it, how do things work, and how do you able to maneuver in those spaces?
In your current role as Concentric, you mentioned that you guys are the only green security company, which was fascinating to me. What led to the building of Concentric, and where do you see the company going from here?
Concentrics, it was interesting. Probably started out about 14 years ago. Our owner, wonderful guy, Roderick Jones, worked at Scotland Yard in counterterrorism and met an American, married, and moved to San Francisco with he and his family. But he bought the company some years ago, and it was largely centered around ultra high net worth individuals and high net worth individuals and family offices. And we provided the full spectrum of security and professional, from physical to cyber to background checks to due diligence to providing executive protection, drivers for their domestic or international travel, for their homes, for their businesses, did background checks for individuals that they were going to have on their staff because of the nature of their business. And then we also do an interesting thing regarding privacy that we call Eclipse, which is this idea of, in today's environment, there's so much out there in digital dust, online and in media, that we actually go through 314 different aggregate sites and are able to pull down information so that people might use. In today's environment, anybody, even yourself, Savio, at this, kind of like, hey, I heard Savio say this, and for some reason, whether it's an environmental, political, or economic phrase, somebody would take offense to that, and in some areas wants to do harm. And so they'll dox you or vox you or find out information that's sensitive and try to do nefarious things to you. So we try to help minimize that. but we provide that security bundle. We also provide these executive risk assessments. We have this great company of an eclectic crowd of backgrounds, from a Navy admiral to people who worked in counterterrorism to CIA, the Secret Service, the FBI, the police force. We have PhDs. We have folks that worked in joint special operations and foreign military operations. And it's this crowd that brings together kind of this second and third order effect of evolutions that are ongoing, like stuff that's going on in Ukraine that's affecting supply management or gas flow or energy that could affect some of our clients, as far as what would the impact that they're not thinking about that may impose. And so we approach it from a very different angle. And then we live our culture. Like you said, we're a green security company. We signed the Amazon Climate Pledge. We were doing carbon offsets for travel, and for some of our clients really appreciated that with the environment. And we also have a neat thing that we have our own 501c3 called the 188 Foundation. The 188 number comes from the number of people we brought out of Afghanistan. Some of our clients asked us that some of their people, women reporters or human rights, were under attack by the Taliban as that was starting to shut down. So we were able to move them all the way up to Maz Sharif, and literally on the last flight out, got 188 Afghan citizens out to go to Mexico to be supported by the International Relocation Committee, the IRC. So we named the fund after that because it was quite unique, using philanthropy money with some unique skills that we had and had our capabilities on to be able to do that. And that has prompted, again, we started in late March actually supporting Ukraine effort as well, helping with humanitarian assistance, providing supplies to hospitals and other, as well as helping other businesses help extract some of their families from the war zone. So this has become also a great sense of pride for us, of us living our values and our culture of our company. So it's great to be a part of Concentric.
Yeah. None of us are who we are unless we had help along the way. And I know you mentioned Admiral Tom Lynch as being one of the foremost people who really taught you this idea of knowing your people and taking care of them. How
Yeah.
has that value been instilled in you till now?
Well, it was learning. Here he was one of my first commanding officers, and I'm a brand new ensign right out of Naval Academy, still wet behind the ears, probably still am. But it was just wonderful about how to understand, to know your people, to understand what they like, what they believe in, how do you develop that relationship, but most importantly, to be genuine and in their care and understanding of how do you take care of these wonderful men and women that serve for you and serve their country at this point. And so that was, imbued me to be able to carry that forward. And it has always been a hallmark, again, this idea of relationships that are so key. And it's up and down. It's not only vertical, but horizontal across your organization or your family or your network to stay connected.
So I wanted to come back to the focus of today's conversation. Mike, how do you define resilience?
Well, resilience is that ability to deal with adversity and uncertainty and to continue to grow and expand during those very difficult times.
And I asked a curious question in the article about courage. Do you see resilience and courage as one and the same, or do you see them as different?
A little bit different, but similar in many ways. The resilience is the ability, as I said, to be able to navigate those very uncertain, chaotic times. And courage, in some cases, gives you the ability to be able to move forward and to carry yourself forward. So they're interconnected, but they are slightly different in how you go about dealing with that environment.
In the piece, there was a question I asked about when you think of persons or person comes to mind when you think of resilience. I just loved how beautifully you expressed what's happening in the world right now. Healthcare workers, first responders, service providers, service members. I think that viewpoint is something that should be honored and should be looked at with great sincerity. How do you view in general?
Well, it's just you look at the incredible strain that the medical care system is under through COVID, the stresses and strains And those were they were kind of the frontline workers in battling this pandemic, and how they, with the information almost changing by the hour of what worked, what didn't work, how do you do it, how do you do with your controls, where does it affect, and it's marvelous at how they maintain the stamina to be able to all of a sudden flip a switch that was from, intensive care units and elective surgery to full on onslaught. This is a pandemic that we need to turn all our resources to be able to help those in need. And so you just got to marvel at that, along with the first responders that also were engaged in that. We're usually the first folks on the scene, or to be able to provide that sense of security in the environment to be able to do it. And then, of course, service members that near and dear to my heart, that are serving overseas, away from their families in very treacherous times, very difficult conditions, but still striving and supporting to allow us to enjoy our freedoms and democracy.
We heard a lot from first responders and healthcare workers on the news, but I didn't really hear a lot from service members. What have you heard from them during this really tepid time that we're all going through?
Well, they had a dual-edged sword. As you know, when you go on these deployments, when you're gone, you're on a mission, you're supporting, national interests and national mission statement. But what's very difficult is you have to leave your family members and loved ones behind. And so the unknown, the fear of what they were experiencing in the pandemic, the situation of their, significant others and loved ones and spouses, that now all of a sudden had to deal with, maybe home care and child care and education while they're overseas involved in creating. And so those all are factors that affect all the men and women that are, serving in the many different locations, of coping with all those unknown dynamics that or potential harm to their loved ones. And so it's an added strain, in addition to the, hey, we need you to do your job to be able to do the mission that we expect you to do as well.
In the article I mentioned, did someone ever tell you something was impossible? And you said, needless to say, the feedback was the stimulant to keep pushing forward. Like, what a great reframe that is. How did you push forward?
Yeah, it is funny, when somebody kind of goes, "Oh, you're not going to do, you're not going to make it through here." It's just kind of like, "Oh, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to demonstrate to you," and and it's part of that resilience, as we talked about, this self-talk, to be able to, take things bite-sized and say, "I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to persevere, and I'm going to show you what you potentially underestimated my abilities to be able to perform in these adverse conditions."
Question about setbacks as well. You really spoke in such simple language about not being promoted and how that frustrated you. What sort of allowed you to move past that challenge?
Oh boy, that was a tough one. As I said, this was funny because it happened when I was over in the earthquake. Having many visits, but also in a weird way, almost one of the most personal and professional rewarding experiences, being responsible for saving so many lives, and becoming the benchmark for what humanitarian assistance disaster relief looks like. And then at the same time, hearing news that you were not selected for that next rank. And so, yeah, as you can imagine, it was kind of like a heartbreak. Wow, I'm doing all this. This is what I did throughout my career to achieve this milestone and be set up for this. And then you just kind of like, okay, again, this, the resilience, the perseverance, kind of like, okay, what do I need to do next to be able to succeed and focus back on mission and succeeding in the roles and being able to move through that.
There was like two key ingredients that I caught in the article that really was of great impact, in my opinion, was sort of this idea of humor and this idea of adaptability. How are those two played a big role in your personal and professional careers?
Yeah, probably big. The biggest thing is, be able to adapt to the situation and really put it in perspective. kind of what's really going on. And, sometimes, we often say, well, this is a first world problem, and, maybe the experience of seeing different cultures and countries and seeing some really, depressed areas or environments, that allow you to say, wow, look at these people, and to be able to adapt to the changing situations. Humor is one of those that I think maybe it's that, a relief mechanism or whatever, but it used to get me in trouble because I would tend to laugh at some of the more extreme stuff, and maybe even some humor, but it was a way to kind of just reframe the issue and kind of go, okay, this is what's happening. Let's dispassionately look at it. What do we need to do? What are the steps to be able to move forward and accomplish this? Because you can easily get brought down by understanding the amazing magnitude of the situation. I mean, like Pakistan, here was 70 when we finally realized that it was 78,000 people that died, 177,000 injured, and then there was 3.5 million people homeless. And you look at those incredible dramatic numbers, and you kind of go, how am I going to fix this? It's kind of that old adage that you can eat the elephant, but you got to take it a bite at a time. And so break it down. Let's realign everybody. Let's get them focused back to what the mission and the goals are, and to be able to move out.
Yeah, I think humor is an untapped it's like superpower, quite honestly. Because so my book launched at the end of February, and one of the so my book was, I interviewed 35 cancer survivors, told my own story as well, and one of them was a voice actor, and he says he uses humor. He used humor during his cancer journey because it's
Yeah.
all he knows, and it lightened the mood, and it also brought people together. So I love the fact that you mentioned that.
Yeah. How about you? Did you use? I mean, your story is just fantastic as well, and it's just
I
marvelous. You
used
persevered
everything.
through
Yeah, I
extreme.
used everything I could. I used humor. I used extras. I used everything I could. Quite
Oh, cool.
honestly. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you're a role model, and it's you
Trying.
kind of look at, you could have easily thought, oh my goodness, and yet you kind of beat the odds and said, nope, this isn't going to happen.
I beat the odds, and I said if I continue beating the odds, I was gonna tell the story of others who did the same. And so here I'm
Yeah,
doing what I can for the cause. But
absolutely.
in
That's marvelous. Thanks,
Thank
Evan.
you. Yeah. So in going back, so what are some of your steps how someone can be more resilient?
Oh, yeah. I kind of characterize them as four. We talked about one already, and that was the self care. I think that's the number one. Number two is the self talk, because sometimes in uncertain environments, we tend to go to the dark side. And so you got to be able to visualize and see what the future looks like at success, and don't let yourself get taken down into those different things. Um, you know, the other part is this ability of the self-awareness, because I think that's probably one of the biggest things as a leadership trait, to be self-aware, to know your own strengths and your own weaknesses. We all have them. In my list of weaknesses are quite long, and so you surround people with you to fill it in so you don't have any holes. But the idea of knowing what triggers you, when you're in a stressful environment, what are those signs? As I said in the article, I had this wonderful pleasure working with Liminal Collective, and Dr. Andy Walsh, who worked at Red Bull and others. And it's a simple technique. We actually put folks through. I supported some of these exercises where we take people out of their comfort zone and put them under stress. For what reasons? To understand what those triggers were, and how do you then cope with that. For me, as I said in the article, it's as easy as knowing when I feel my tension and heart rate, and just simple box breathing to be able to relax, take a few moments to get composed, and to be able to do that. And then the
Yeah.
last one that kind of relates to, kind of the relationships, and that is staying connected. I mean, as you know, what you went through, I mean, those friends, family, relationships that you had, that gave you the strength and power and compassion to be able to get through some heroic, odds against you, but it helped you so much. And so those are the four key things that I find for resilience to help me adapt, help me to deal with that ambiguity and uncertainty and chaos that we are often exposed to.
So, Mike, I would love to transition now into what I call brainstorming. I asked a curious question in there. If you could create a movement, what would that be? And yours was really simply critical thinking, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
I just thought maybe you and I can just discuss that a little further and see if we could, I don't know, somehow move it just an inch further
Oh,
than what it
cool.
is now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, because I really see, I'm concerned about the misinformation and disinformation, some domestic terrorism. Maybe it's from my background at National Counterterrorism Center, but also the seeing that and also seeing the unfortunate of the wonderful thing about what we are here as America, this blend of incredible cultures and backgrounds and experiences. And we've seemed to getting more polarized in our views to these extreme points on the curve, when I really believe that there's so many of us that are, when you get down to it and have an honest conversation, the critically thinking about what we can value, what information, what's true, where can we find common ground to be able to advance, and where we don't, and figure out how to way to solve it. And so it's really a passion for me. I worry as I watch the energy or voices of the opposite sides start increasing, and it kind of defeats some of the values that we started as a country.
One thing that comes to mind is this idea of I feel like it's either you're in two camps or you're not in any camp at all. And I wish
Yeah,
there was a way to have a very compassionate understanding or debate, a healthy debate, whatever the case may be, so that the information is presented without individuals thinking there's an agenda attached to the information
correct.
that's being,
Yeah.
presented. I know that's hard, but just from my perspective, I just wish there was more of that. Because I mean, I have to admit, I have family members who are on opposite sides of my own philosophy. I learned a long, long time ago from a really good friend who says we have to have unity through diversity. We have to find a way to unify
Right.
even though we differ. So yeah, that's the only thing I can really think of is to
Oh,
have a
I
healthy debate of ideas and exchanges, which is fine
yeah.
as long as there's some general rules. We don't act violent, we don't put demean each
Correct.
other. Those things have to be agreed upon. But other than that, it's a context of information. So
Well, I think it is. It's that civil discourse, and I love your ability. I thought it was, but it's actually a General Patton quote that basically says, "When two people are thinking alike, somebody's not thinking." And I love that from the value of it is truly the diversity of thought that allows you to come to a better solution, but be able to have that civil discourse to be able to do it. I was at I'm a member of the Cipher Brief, which is a collection of professionals that had national security background. At one of the conferences, it was a wonderful saying. I think it was the former uh, head of the defense ODNI, General Clapper, that says, right now, unfortunately, we have a problem of truth decay. It was kind of funny. It was a play on words, but he says, we right now, because of this polarization, there are some that we can't even agree on facts and truth, which is which is a difficult one because, at least to understand some of the basic foundations that you're all coming. But there is a lot of perspectives out there, and where you sit, where you belong. But the ability to get to a common ground, I think, is key. Like you said, critical thinking, civil discourse, being able to tolerate and to understand the values in different cultures, and to see where all those experiences is what makes us better.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
It's something I'm I'm waiting to see further emboldened in our world. I'm being
yeah.
optimistic because that's the type of person I
Oh,
am.
I'm always an optimist, probably to a fault.
So, Mike, tell my audience and listeners out there how they can find out more about you and your work and your company.
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn at Mike LeFever. I do have a Twitter handle. It's Mike LeFever1. But also just reach out. You can find us at concentric.io, and there's a way to contact, or if there's anything I can help with. I love the ability to help and support others. And if there's anything I could do, I enjoy that. Again, all about relationships, and I think the value of helping each other.
Okay, wonderful. Mike, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Savio, thanks so much. Really
Sure.
appreciate it, and your marvelous story as well. So
Oh,
thank you for having me. I'm very
sure.
humbled.